My husband asked me to talk about Ann Coulter's recent Twitter post, and he rarely asks for anything, so let's do it. The other day, Ann Coulter, who demonstrates the worst that humanity has to offer, posted this. This is real. Ann Coulter, whose heart is as shriveled as the rest of her, did actually post this on Twitter. This absolutely despicable genocidal comment was left in reply to award-winning attorney Marina Medvin resharing a video featuring a speech by Navajo artist and professor Melanie Yazzie. I'm familiar with Melanie because she's one of the hosts of the Red Power Hour on the Red Nation podcast, which I started listening to a few years back with my daughters. I'm as lily white as you can get, but my husband and my kids are members of the Chickasaw Nation, and I listen to a lot of Indigenous podcasts as part of my attempt to decolonize myself and be a better ally. Maybe I'll throw up on my Patreon a list of the podcasts that I listen to regularly and recommend. But I'm familiar with Melanie in that context, and I found out this week that she's actually a Grinnell College alumni, just like myself and my husband. She has a BS in political science. Yazzie is an artist, an activist, an educator. She is obviously also a podcast host and an author. She co-authored the Red Deal, Indigenous Action to Save the Earth, and also Red Nation Rising, From Border Town Violence to Native Liberation. Ann Coulter has generally been despicable and shameless in her overt racism for a long time. Her choice to use those words was intentional. Her support of a genocidal narrative against America's Indigenous people is intentional. So in this video that Ann Coulter is replying to, Professor Yazzie is talking about decolonization and liberation movements and oppressive genocidal governments. Ann Coulter's choice in response to a video by an Indigenous woman, the demographic which faces greater risk of abduction, violence, and murder than any other group in the United States. Her choice to use that phrase, "we didn't kill enough Indians," would be reprehensible, unacceptable at any point in time, but especially in 2025 America, when racism is emboldened, when this regime is carrying out an ethnic cleansing against brown people. Let's be clear, Indigenous people to North and Central America, right? The only distinction between Native Americans and Indigenous people south of our border is that artificial border that has been put in place by our government. A number of Indigenous creators have talked about the ethnic cleansing that Trump and his ilk are carrying out against brown people in this country is just a continuation of the genocide that has been going on for centuries against Indigenous Americans on this side of the border. It is a logical extension of that genocidal thinking and behavior. Ann Coulter's post got 10.7 million views, despite being partially censored by Twitter for violating their rules against violent speech. Like, how bad is the thing that you're saying if Twitter is censoring it? Twitter, where a Hitler AI is now operational, and the CEO of Twitter quit as a result of it. That's how bad what Ann Coulter said is. I mean, it should be like incredibly obviously apparent to all of us that what she said was inexcusable. There is no way to rationalize or justify it. And obviously, like, she meant it. She meant it. But in 2025 America, where all kinds of reprehensible, bigoted speech is just like attempting to be normalized all over the culture, where people get away with saying and doing horrible things, Ann Coulter's statement was so bad that Twitter censored it. Cherokee Nation Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. said of Coulter's post, "The cruelty of Coulter's comments are, of course, self-evident to decent human beings from all quarters. We have made much progress in the United States as it relates to federal Indian policy. Conservatives, liberals, Republicans, and Democrats have had a hand in advancing this cause, which is so special to me as chief of the nation's largest tribe, particularly over the last half century. What Ann Coulter said is heartless, vicious, and should be repudiated by people of good faith, regardless of political philosophy or party. Some things are simply wrong, and we cannot validate it through our silence." The National Congress of American Indians also condemned Ann Coulter's words. "Celebrating genocide against tribal nations crosses every moral line. Careless comments like this," I don't think it was careless, y'all, "glorify the darkest chapters of U.S. history and endanger Native people's lives today. We will not sit silently at attempts to normalize this abhorrent behavior. We demand an immediate retraction and public apology, and we expect leaders of every political persuasion to denounce this abomination without equivocation. Again, this was a wealthy, white, privileged, conservative woman with an audience of tens of millions. She advocated for the killing of more Indigenous Americans and directed her comments specifically at an Indigenous woman, a woman who also has been targeted by the Times of Israel, I should add. Indigenous women and girls are assaulted at rates 10 times higher than the average in the United States. By the way, those crimes are overwhelmingly committed by non-Indigenous people. Indigenous Americans make up approximately 3% of our population, specifically because this country has had physical and cultural genocide being enacted against Native peoples since before we were a nation. Indigenous women and girls still face extreme violence in this country. They are still under direct threat from white people mostly. Ann Coulter's comments cannot be allowed to stand. We all have an obligation to speak out against them. And I think this is a really good opportunity to advocate for and educate people about the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls crisis in this country. I think it's also a great opportunity for white people like us to start learning about Indigenous people's history in this country. This is a great chance for us to start to do that decolonizing work that we maybe have not done previously. I think a great place for any white person to start is an Indigenous People's History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. If you're not somebody who reads a lot or what have you, the audiobook version is very good. It's available through the public library. I've listened to it several times from Libby. I think I actually will put a list up on my Patreon for free of all of the Indigenous podcasts that I listen to and have learned a lot from. Now would be a great time to go over and support the Red Nation podcast, to join their Patreon, to support Red Power Hour and Melanie Yazzie work. We know that racists, cruel, despicable people are emboldened in this current climate, and that's why it's more important than ever that we take a stand, that we make sure that we're on the right side of history, that we do the work of advocating for people who are targeted by this regime, and also do the work of decolonizing, doing the work of educating ourselves, doing the work of unpacking all of our preconceived notions and misconceptions so that we can be good allies. I think every single one of us should be speaking out against what Ann Coulter said and finding ways that we can meaningfully engage in decolonization, which benefits not only Indigenous people in this country, it benefits all of us. Colonization hurts all of us. I want to be very clear here. We have every obligation as American citizens, as decent people, to be speaking out against the genocidal statements of Ann Coulter. I want to make it very clear. We have an obligation as Americans and as decent human beings to not let the words of Ann Coulter stand unanswered. We must vigorously speak out against them. What she said was inexcusable, reprehensible, genocidal, and must be universally condemned.